where is this headed for other states? Are you going to other states and talking to regulators? Are they inviting you? I know there are now 4 or 5 other states that are in various stages of this process, and certainly not as far along as New York is or as aggressive, but where does this go with other states? And is there what lessons can we learn from international markets in how this is structured?
Sure.
Big question, I know, but that's what came in a couple times.
Well,
questions.
a lot of states are looking at this. They're struggling and thinking about, how to move forward. I mean, people saw this in Arizona. The big fight about net metering versus value of solar is really around the same thing. How do you create a regulatory model that starts looking at these resources at an advantage as opposed to a disadvantage? That's true in Minnesota. It's true in a lot of states. So I think my experience is a lot of states are looking at New York. The nice thing that we have is that, quite frankly, our system requirements are not atypical of what they have in New Jersey, what they have in Maryland, what they have in Delaware. So,
but your intellectual capital is, according to
well,
Jiga.
wait, I'm gonna.
Brilliant.
But the big thing, because Hawaii has a big issue, right?
Yeah.
Because of all the integration of solar. But then people look and they say, well, that's Hawaii. It doesn't really reflect what we need to do here. But in New York, it's really hard to get away. And actually, even in California, they say, well, that's California. I mean, but we're sort of mainstream. So I think there is a lot of interest in what we're doing. Secondly, if you take a look at any large vertical city across the world, the issues we have in New York are the same issues they have in Hong Kong and Beijing and Tokyo. So frankly, people are looking at what we're doing, and the lessons learned for us, and that's one of the things we want to do, we're trying to create accretive value. We're not trying to destroy value. So for example, when you do mandates like they did in Germany, the distribution utilities lost a lot of economic value. That's not a good outcome. And so if we can actually help make sure that all the companies stay economically healthy, that keeps the capital costs down, which actually benefits consumers. So we are trying to look at things like, if you do a mandate and say everyone's going to go over here and invest in solar, well then what are the unintended outcomes of that versus looking at how do you drive markets. And so that's, to me, we have learned from the past. We're also looking, for example, heavily at England, where they put in a process of regulatory based on outcomes. That's a lot of what we're thinking about, is looking at how you get utilities to change performance by rewarding outcomes that you want to achieve, such as driving efficiency, carbon reduction, integrating innovation, and thinking about those, as a thoughtful way of how do we align utility interests with consumer interests much better in the traditional construct. So, to me, what REV is about is that not about saying we're going to sort of not have central station power plants anymore, because we're going to have central station power plants. The issue is how do we make the entire system, the grid from generation to load, much more efficient by creating that Internet of Things through price signals so that you drive efficiency all across the board. And what that does is that then you start thinking about how you manage load to accommodate the supply of resources that you want to have. So in other words, if you need more solar and storage and you know that they are available different times, you manage load so that now load is actually following generation. In other words, you're dispatching it to accommodate the types of generation resources rather than thinking about generation always having to follow load, which is what creates the problem. And that is, coming at this, and I will say that, in New York, I will plug us. We're looking at this because we have folks who understand the systems. We're not ignoring the physics of the system. We have folks who really care about markets. We have, people who really understand financing. And we're bringing all of that capability together to drive a solution rather than thinking this is just, we're a hammer, we're just regulators, and everything looks like a nail. It's really trying to bring in all those market fundamentals.
I think just to go on, continue one comment that you made, if we can get it right in New York City, in our case, think about, particularly during Climate Week, how important that would be. 50% of the world lives in cities. By 2050, it's going to be 75%. Mm-hmm. So the kind of dense urban energy issue, integrating different types of assets is critical. I mean, Delhi, Jakarta, Hong Kong, pick your city. If we can figure this out, I think the impact's going to be substantial.